You wake up, brush your teeth, have breakfast, take a bus, work, come home, try to distract yourself, sleep, and repeat. At first glance, this routine seems normal, but Max Weber saw something much deeper in it. A prison, an invisible cage that you can't see, but from which you rarely escape. He wasn't talking about bars, but rather rules, routines, and demands that you've learned to follow as if they were natural. Weber gave this a name, Iron Cage. A system that emerged with modernity and was strengthened by bureaucracy, rationalization, and the cult of efficiency. In the past, human beings did what they did out of faith, myth, and a sense of community. Today, they do what they do because it's the procedure, it's the right thing to do, it's what gives results. But the price of this silent efficiency is the loss of meaning, and Weber was one of the first to realize this. Modernity has created increasingly organized, precise, and impersonal institutions. Everything works better, yes, but it also empties the spirit. The freedom that seemed to come with progress brought with it an invisible rigidity, a demand for productivity, control, and conformity that slowly suffocates. Without anyone shouting, you follow rules you didn't create. You submit to decisions you don't understand. And when you feel something is wrong, you look around and see that everyone seems to be living the same way. Then you conclude, it must be like that, and you go back to your cage. But Weber asked, is this life you lead really yours? Or is it just the result of a system that has shaped your mind, your schedule, your dreams, and even your faith? Modern rationality did not arrive asking for permission. It crept in and took hold in companies, schools, governments, and everyday life. Suddenly, everything had to be calculated, measured, and compared. If it doesn't produce results, it's useless. If it doesn't generate profit, it's disposable. If it doesn't follow the rules, it's excluded. And the scariest part, this cage is not imposed with violence. It is accepted with gratitude. You learn to love yourself, as long as it provides you with Wi-Fi, a steady paycheck, and a little entertainment at night. But what do you lose in this process? You waste time, but you call it productivity. You lose spontaneity, but you call it efficiency. You lose soul, but you call it progress. Weber saw this as the dilemma of our time. The more we advance in rationality, the further we become from the enchantment of life. More rational, less human. More organized, less free. And this modern prison has no wardens, it has manuals. The world has changed. But has freedom grown with it, or have we just changed the shape of the cell? Max Weber believed that the greatest danger of modernity was not external violence, but the silent domestication of the human spirit. Modern man is no longer dominated by kings, but by forms. He is no longer watched over by soldiers, but by systems that tell him what can and cannot be done. Domination has become rational, and for that very reason, almost invisible. For Weber, this transition was no accident. It was an evolution of the world's organizational logic. What was once driven by tradition or charisma is now governed by written rules, deadlines, and fixed structures. Bureaucracy has replaced myth, Excel has replaced the sacred, and the result, a life where everything works, but almost nothing excites. Modern bureaucracy is cold, but efficient, impersonal, but stable. It doesn't care who you are. It cares about the position you hold, the number you represent, the task you perform. If you disappear, someone else can do the same. You become a piece of machinery, not a person, functional, but disposable. This creates a silent sense of replaceability. You start to feel like just another person. And the most dangerous thing is that you start to think like just another person. Your decisions are now governed not by values, but by systems. You say yes to what pays more, not what makes more sense. You accept the job, the bill, the process, but you ignore the question. Is this what I want, or just what I was trained to accept? Weber saw rationalization as a sophisticated trap. It is logical but dry, functional but dehumanizing. And the more efficient it is, the more it requires you to cancel the unexpected, the artistic, the intuitive, the spiritual. What cannot be measured is ignored. And that's where the feeling of disenchantment comes in, another central expression in Weber. The modern world is no longer a stage for the sacred. Now it's a machine. Nature has become a resource. Time has become a calendar. Life has become a project. And the human being has become a spreadsheet. You are moved by art, but you live to achieve goals. You connect with what is alive, but you spend your days stuck to what is programmed. You miss something you can't even name, and Weber would say it's the magic of existence that has been replaced by the logic of efficiency. There is no way to go back in time. Weber knew this, but he warns us. If you don't reconnect with what makes you human, you will become a machine trying to survive in a cage that you feed yourself. You don't have to break up with everything, but you need to at least look inside and ask, how many decisions in my life were really mine, and how many were just the next step in the system I was trained to follow? The risk of modernity is not collapse. It is conformity. It's not war, it's apathy. It's not fear, it's boredom disguised as security. And in the meantime, the cage closes one more click. Max Weber was no romantic, but he was also not blind to the silent pain that progress brought. He said that modernity gave us control, but took away the enchantment. And that is more serious than it seems. For millennia, humans lived in a magical world where thunder had gods, trees had spirits, and life was full of signs. Everything was symbolic. There was a why behind every how. It didn't matter if it was scientifically accurate. What mattered was that it made the soul vibrate. But then came science, then came calculus, then came systems, and with them came the loss of mystery. What was once a temple became a building. What was once a miracle became a protocol. What was poetry became a report. Weber called this the disenchantment of the world. This is not a criticism of science. It is a criticism of excessive rationalization, of the mania of measuring everything, of the attempt to put even love into a spreadsheet, of wanting to predict the human soul with algorithms. Today, you don't ask yourself if you're living with purpose. You ask yourself if you have stability. You don't ask yourself what you love. You ask yourself if you have time. You don't look at the sky and see mystery. You see the weather and close the window. Disenchantment is not just a spiritual crisis. It is a crisis of sensitivity, of perception. It is life that becomes a function, birth that becomes a protocol, death that becomes a statistic. You miss something you can't explain. It's the absence of poetry, the lack of the sacred. Weber said that modern man is condemned to live disenchanted if he does not have the courage to recover by himself a way of reconnecting with meaning. And this reconnection will not come from outside. It will not come from a new ideology, nor from a new tool. It will have to come from within. But how do you do this in a world where everything pushes you to automatic? You will need to disobey, not external laws, but invisible expectations. You will need to relearn how to contemplate, how to listen, how to perceive the value of the useless. You will need to waste time on things that do not produce results, but that regenerate the soul. You will have to remember that there is beauty in pauses, that there is truth in silence, that there is power in not producing. Modernity has taken the sacred away from the world, but it has not taken away from you the ability to see meaning where no one else sees it. Weber was not religious, but he knew that without spirituality, in the broadest sense of the word, humanity would enter an elegant void. Everything functioning, but no one breathing. Everything clean, but no one touched. Everything accessible, but no one truly alive. So ask yourself, are you living or just being efficient? Are you following your spirit or just the logic they gave you? Because the cage doesn't hold your body. It suffocates your enchantment with life. You think you are choosing everything, what you study, where you work, what you buy, even who you love. But Max Weber raised an uncomfortable question. What if it is not you who chooses? What if it is the system that has already predefined everything and only gives you the illusion of choice? Modern bureaucracy, according to Weber, is not just a form of organization, it is a behavior-shaping force. It standardizes, classifies, rationalizes, automates, and in doing so, depersonalizes. What was once human became a number. What was once intuition became a form. And you started to adapt so as not to cause problems, not to delay anyone, not to step out of line. But Weber knew, every time you silence your intuition to fit the rule, a part of your soul bends. Bureaucracy teaches you that you shouldn't be you. You should be functional. Whoa. And for that, she gives you an invisible script. At what age should you work? When it is right to get married? How to behave in an interview? What to put on LinkedIn to appear useful? Which diploma to choose to be someone? You follow this script without question, because everyone does. But deep down, something inside you knows this life was not dreamed, it was assigned. Weber saw bureaucracy as the pinnacle of modern rationality. It is not cruel, it is neutral. But precisely for that reason, it is dangerous. It takes the heat out of life. There is no love in a credit approval. There is no humanity in a screening system. There is no poetry in the minutes of a meeting. Have you ever stopped to think about what you lost by trying to fit in? That idea you didn't say because it wasn't the right time. That apology you swallowed out of professional pride. That art you stopped doing because it didn't pay the bills. Weber was not against organization. He was against the reduction of the human to the useful. He knew that, little by little, bureaucracy sculpts obedient, efficient, and empty minds. You become good at following patterns, but terrible at hearing your own calling. You learn to avoid mistakes, but you also avoid risks. You know where to click, but you don't know where it hurts anymore. And when you realize, your personality has been replaced by a function. You are no longer a name. You are a position, a record, a history, and that gives you security, yes. But it hides a pain. You were pruned to fit. Weber did not propose destruction of the system, but interconsciousness within it. He believed that only those who perceive their imprisonment have a chance to keep their inner freedom alive. And you? Have you realized how accustomed you have become to obeying? The cage that Weber describes is made of paper, deadlines, positions, but also of fear. Fear of displeasing. Fear of losing stability. Fear of saying, this doesn't make sense to me anymore. Max Weber did not believe that the modern world forced us with chains. He believed that it trained us with routines. Domination, in the 20th century, became much more sophisticated. It did not command. It formatted. Bureaucracy and rationalization have created a new kind of obedience. The kind you don't even notice. You are not forced to behave in a certain way. You learn that it is better this way. You are not forced to follow rules. You internalize that it is right. You are not forced to silence your desires. You conclude that it's not worth it. You are not prevented from living your dreams. You convince yourself that it's not possible. And when all this fits perfectly with what society expects of you, Max Weber says, domination has become legitimate. But legitimate does not mean free. Legitimate just means you accepted it. And that's the danger. You start to feel grateful for the cage. After all, it offers order, salary, status, predictability. But at the same time, it takes away from you what cannot be explained. The desire to create without function. The courage to change without logic. The connection to something that cannot be calculated. Weber pointed out that the great question of modernity was no longer who is in charge, but how power hides itself. It is no longer in the shout, it is in the form. It's not in the fear, it's in the routine. It's not in the punishment, it's in the praise for productivity. You feel like you are being helpful, but is it being alive? You perform tasks, but you no longer know why. You get promoted, but you no longer feel joy. You set goals, but you feel tired and won't go away. It's as if you were obeying all the time, but without knowing who. And this obedience is not that of an employee. It is that of a mind that has been conditioned. You don't just work for a boss, you work for a successful idea that was implemented before you even chose it. Weber saw this as the greatest risk of the modern era. Human beings giving up themselves in the name of something they don't even know where it came from. The rationality that governs your day-to-day life. was built to keep you efficient, but it rarely asks you if you are full. Invisible obedience is the most powerful. Because it doesn't impose, it educates. She doesn't threaten, she rewards. It doesn't take away your voice, it makes you stop wanting to use it. And the most dangerous, the thing is that the cage now has Wi-Fi, air conditioning, facial recognition. But it's still a cage. Max Weber was not a pessimist. He was a radical realist. When he spoke of the iron cage, he was not describing a dystopia. He was describing modern life as it is. Orderly, predictable, functional, but empty. Have you ever noticed how the world around you seems more and more organized, but people seem more and more lost? We have more information than ever before, more control, more stability, and at the same time, more anxiety, more exhaustion. More people silently asking, "What's all this for?" Weber already knew. The more the system focuses on efficiency, the more it stifles meaning. Companies have goals, but their employees have no purpose. Cities have Wi-Fi, but they have no soul. Young people have diplomas, but they don't know who they are. The iron cage that Weber described does not restrain your movements. It restrains your imagination. It limits your vision of what is possible. She says, there is only this path. Follow this script. Grow into it. And if you dare to leave, the world calls it failure. But failure for whom? For those who measure value by position? For those who value status over peace? For those who think that success is only about profit? Weber warned. Modernity has a silent price. It doesn't just take away your faith. It takes away the mystery that made life worth living. And without mystery, life becomes a chore. You start to feel a strange longing for something you never had, but always sought. A thirst for meaning, for transcendence, for something greater than reports and bills. But they didn't teach you to seek it, they taught you to follow. You were taught that being sensitive is being weak, that slowing down is wasting time, that caring is being too intense. The iron cage is not made of steel. It is made of ideas that have been normalized. Ideas like, money is everything. Productivity is value. Spirituality is for lost people. You have to be someone, and then you can rest. Weber understood. Rationality gave us control, but it tore away our connection to the invisible. He made us masters of technique, but illiterate in spirit. And so you live inside the machine. You fulfill your function. You receive applause. But inside, you feel that something essential has been silenced. The name for this is not failure. It's meaningless life disguised as success. And the question Weber would leave you with now is, do you want to remain efficient or finally be whole? Max Weber did not believe that the only way out was to destroy the system. He knew that bureaucracy, organization, and rationality brought stability, progress, and unquestionable advances. But he also knew that the price of this is too high when we forget to ask, why? The real tragedy of modernity is not the organization of the world. It is the inner disorganization of the human being. We live surrounded by systems, but without direction, surrounded by tools, but without purpose, full of goals, but empty of meaning. The question that Weber leaves echoing is simple and brutal. What do you live for? If the answer is simply to pay the bills, advance your career, be respected socially, then perhaps you are simply surviving efficiently within a structure that was never made for your soul. But there is a way out, and it's not outside, it's inside. Escaping the cage doesn't mean breaking away from everything, nor isolating yourself from the world. It means waking up. To understand again, to question again, to remember again what made your eyes shine before the spreadsheet, before the badge, before the routine formatted you. And most importantly, it means making conscious choices within a world that wants to see you automated. Weber never offered a manual, but he left traces. Cultivate spaces where mystery still exists. Art, music, faith, contemplation. Learn to think before you obey, and to feel before you act. Question the goals you were taught to pursue. Accept that what is not useful is often what keeps you alive. Protect your ability to say no, even if everyone else is saying yes. Modernity has built an invisible cage, but the spirit you carry is still free. Weber believed that, despite everything, consciousness is still possible. That lucidity is a form of resistance. That freedom, even within an extremely organized world, can still be rescued by those who dare to remember that life is not just function, it is presence. You can continue this cycle, and the world will even applaud you for it. But at some point, the silence of your soul will scream louder than the sound of your alarm clock. And when that day comes, perhaps you will remember Max Weber, and perhaps you will understand more clearly than ever. You don't need to break the cage, you just need to stop calling it home.